future, they could ride out and live it. And we had some advantage in those days that made it a little easier for us to buy land for fairly cheap. There weren't any building codes in Oregon until 1974. We had some slack, which we should be happy about because we were able to experiment. But basically, we decided how we're going to take care of ourselves. And it was through building community that we took care of ourselves and simple country living, so to speak, and gardening. And there was a coming together of the natural foods movement, the herbal medicine movement, that would be Dr. John Christopher from the Mormons and others, and the beginnings of the organic farm movement. And out of the coming together of these three interests came Tilth organization, Provender organization, all these natural food stores in the Pacific Northwest. And so clearly, we were looking to, one, take care of ourselves, be healthy, do it without involving the modern medical establishment. And we figured out how to do these things. And all of us have benefited from the experience of the Back to the Land movement of taking care of ourselves, eating good. I was with Ma Revolution's Natural Foods Collective in Berkeley in the early 70s, and our motto was, eat good. And I do believe we ate good this evening, so I was happy. We also formed urban cooperatives, which some people call communes. I think we may be moving back in that direction. I really want to emphasize again herbal medicine, the people's medicine, learning the herbs, learning how to take care of ourselves. And also on Michael Pilarski's table, my book, Green Root Hoe, is back in print. So you can have a look at a permaculture herbology, which is over there on the table. We did a lot of celebration, and we had Michael Pilarski to lead us in the songs. That was really good. And we researched diets very carefully. Now we have veganism, we have all these different diets. Some of them are curative, and some of them are long range. And we've really changed how to stay healthy without spending money. And we did our own labor. We learned skills. Now, I am very sorry to say that I'm now driving a Ford Ranger truck and I can't even change the spark plugs myself. So things have really changed as far as technology that we're using and our ability to repair that technology and our knowledge of how to work hard and healthy, how to keep going without injury, and how to change the tasks we're doing. So there was a whole learning thing that we went through, which I think we ought to be teaching now. And we also learned something very important. If you had a job, you didn't have a life. And then, I'm now reading a lot of Morris Berman. And he wrote The Reenchantment of the Earth. It was one of his series of books. He's an intellectual. And he's pointing out how in our computer age, a lot of us have become skimmers instead of thinkers. And a lot of what we did as Back to the Landers was meditation and yoga and being quiet and taking long walks and wilderness travel. And that kept us on the ground. That kept us healthy. And so a few of us have made it through. And some of us dropped less acid than others. So now we're looking at a science fiction future because it's unpredictable. And luckily we have some writers, especially Kim Stanley Robinson, who wrote the Mars series. And he talks about the terraforming of Mars, and he talks about writing laws and constitutions that return us to an ecological basis of economy. So that if you develop a surplus of methane, you have to talk somebody into taking it off your hands. And there were mechanisms that Kim Stanley Robinson built up in his ideas to do that. We're also very lucky to have Ursula Le Guin, God bless her. And she wrote Always Coming Home.
Yes.
And that is a permaculture Bible. And she wrote the Earthsea trilogy and lots of other books that are experimental, like The Dispossessed. And I got to see her in Portland a few months ago. It was wonderful. It was a highlight of my life, I think. We are now at peak everything. And it looks crazy, but another thing we did in the 60s was look at psychology. And one of the people that really interested us was Fritz Perls. And he talked about having divided personality, where we're confused, where we don't know what's going on, and where things aren't working, and it's not hanging together. And he said, you have to push people through the impasse. And then their personality reorganizes on the other side. It always scared me really bad to think about. But now I'm not as scared, because I think we all ought to keep breathing, and I think we all ought to be expecting a wild ride. And we cannot know exactly what strategies are going to work. So the best idea, my advice, is that we do everything we can. In permaculture, that's called, we used to call it the shotgun approach, I guess the scatter approach, which is plant them all and let the goddess sort them out. Seeds everywhere. And we got a lot of flack for that because we were accused of spreading around exotics and creating monsters. And really, the guy that created the monsters on the West Coast was named Luther Burbank. And you can look into that history. Both of the blackberries we have, a lot of stuff he sold to small farmers turned into be Frankensteins. Called them Burbank's Frankensteins. Now, I'm thinking that we're looking at such huge changes coming forth on big time scales that you can't see. You can't see what the new world looks like as it manifests. You only get little glimmers out of the corner of your eyes because things are coming apart. I like the metaphor I heard, which is of a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. The caterpillar has to self-destruct. But within the caterpillar are these different cells. They're imagel cells. And these cells kind of have to survive this self-destruction in order to reorganize all the raw materials in the goop that's inside. I won't get too graphic. And then out comes a butterfly, right? I mean, amazing. So I think we're actually dealing with world renewal. This is joyful eco-simplicity that we're moving into. Back down onto the ground. The back to the earth movement has never died. And we are that. And boy, do we have some history, and do we have some roots. Now, if I go way back in the back to the land movement, we're talking feudalism. And I propose that we're looking at a new feudalism, the 1% and the 99%. And I have a really kind of positive attitude about that because I live on a ranch and I recognize the woman who runs the ranch as the chat de laine. This is an old French term of feudalism. The woman who watches, who takes care of things, who organizes things. And when the sheriff comes to visit, they don't talk to me as a forester. They talk to the chat de laine. So in feudalism, the hierarchy is actually a mechanism of community communication. And within the hierarchy, there are protected cultural cultures that are under the oversight of the sheriff and the chapdelaine on a relocalized basis. So I think we can start a caretakers co-op, a stewardship co-op. And I believe we can offer our services to the landowners. And there's all this old English law, which I'm going to get to after I get through this little scenario that I'm going to lay out, where you can work seasonally while living in non-code housing. This is Oregon law. So there's all this old Oregon law, like access to economic opportunity, housing for seasonal workers, that goes on, that is actually very, very old feudal law. I think we should look at what the positiveness of the positive parts of this are. A wonderful book that Ursula Le Guin was vaguely involved with is called Ishi, Man of Two Worlds. I forget what the subtitle is. Ishi was a Native American, the last Aborigine in California, who appeared in a corral near Chico, California, and said, "All my people are dead. I'm ready to talk. What do you want to know?" And Ursula Le Guin's parents, the Krogers, the anthropologists, debriefed Ishi. And Ishi laid out a semi-nomadic lifestyle that moved through a series of camps at different elevations. 52% of the state of Oregon is federal or government property. 52%. And a lot of that property is our watershed, our airshed. You folks know a lot of this. I suggest that we learn to be nomadics again, gypsies, and that we spend time moving across this landscape from camp to camp, because there are laws that allow us to stay 30 days in any place, and laws that allow us to be in temporary housing, and laws that allow us grazing rights on all the roadsides, including parking your gypsy wagon. And I have actually seen this in the Applegate in the last 20 years. Gypsies moving through. They told me about these things. One of the most exciting youth movements in Europe and in the world that I've heard about so far is the Spanish youth. Because the Spanish youth are using the old grazing laws that allow you to move the sheep through downtown Barcelona and to camp in the main plaza. And so they said, "Hey, this is what we're doing. We're restoring the landscape. We're restoring our matriarchy. We're restoring who we are. And we're here to have a discussion." And by gum, the Spanish youth have, from what I've read, got the furthest in developing a parallel government, making a lot of suggestions about changes. And I think it's a really good combination to look at the old feudalism and the new possibilities. In order for us to build a new culture of feudalism that is an eco-restorative culture that has a semi-nomadic lifestyle, we need a whole bunch of reskilling. And the Transition Town movement has kind of is faltering a little bit. A lot of things are faltering that contain the implication of reform. This is a difficult point, but I wanted to try to make it. Watch when you're talking with people and complaining about something, if we aren't implying that someone ought to fix it. Because it ain't fixable. This is how the empire crumbles. It's messy. It falls apart. You can't fix it. Nonetheless, this is denies everything he has ever been accused of, and he's claimed, and they accuse him of forming the deep ecology movement, of setting up the structure of deep ecology movement. And he says, pay attention, but don't buy it. And I really like that. It isn't when I say there is very little possibility for reform, I don't mean check out. I mean observe closely and engage. But as the old Celtic saying goes, everything to do, nothing to get done. And very important things, these ancient wisdoms. Because I think we should move forward with discussions of how we might be able to change things, but don't expect any of it to work. Instead, sharpen your intellectual abilities. Learn to think. Learn to talk to each other. And boy, am I happy about Occupy Wall Street and what's going on. Let's give them a agenda. No hit list. When Peter Yarrow was one of my heroes, Peter, Paul, and Mary. Well, some of you may be too young for Peter, Paul, and Mary. But Peter Yarrow played in Manhattan, and he just went down the checklist of the old new left, old left stuff, and everybody was like, huh? So really interesting that we're at a point where it's safe for all of us from every part of the society to talk to each other. An opening has been made. This is really good. Instead of activism, which is in your face, which is desperate, we're looking at organizing. Very, very different. Let's understand the difference between activism and organizing. And so I have some ideas about organizing, but in the meantime, we're having this consensus discussion where we're trying to get as many people as possible into the conversation. I had this dream a long time ago that one day we wake up and we all go, huh, we walk downtown. When we get downtown, everybody else is there going, Then we start to talk. Well, I think my dream is coming true. I kind of check it out.